Atlantic Canadians continue to pick up the pieces following post-tropical storm Fiona, while many are still assessing the overall impact of the storm on infrastructure, businesses, local economies, and maybe even the markets. South of the border, Florida is dealing with its own dangerous weather, with Hurricane Ian leaving a path of destruction in the Sunshine State. As hurricanes, flooding, and wildfires continue to become more common in North America, how will these climate disasters impact investors? Well, joining us now to talk more on this is Brendan Caldwell, Director of Caldwell Securities Ltd. Brendan, welcome back.
Thank you, Nima.
So how do stock markets react to hurricanes, Brendan?
It'd have to be pretty big, like Katrina big, for stock markets to actually care, except in limited sectors where, say, it's hitting Louisiana and the Gulf states where there's a lot of oil refining, and that could and did push up the price of oil and gas. Well, right now, oil and gas is such a mess and supply constrained on a global basis that one more constraint, I don't know how much effect it'll actually have. The states that tend to get hit the hardest are typically not the most industrialized. However, it is perhaps a bit cynically, natural disasters in general, and hurricanes included, are opportunities for companies that wish to report bad news to be able to say, well, it's because of this natural disaster, this hurricane, it impacted us this much. So it's an opportunity to put all the bad news out at once. So it can be used by companies, but in terms of overall market impact, except for specific sectors like oil and gas, tends to have a minimal impact.
All right, Brendan. Well, talking about major hurricanes, we know last year Hurricane Ida affected some key industries. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so that'd be an example where agriculture was hit. It really hit the Gulf states. That's Louisiana and these places where they do a lot of the oil refining in the U.S. So in terms of gasoline, energy, agriculture, there are some impacts there. Unfortunately, most of the impact tends to be on actual real human beings, real lives, real property where people live, where they're trying to make a life. The flooding and the damage there, that's the real tragedy, as opposed to markets, which perhaps a bit cynically do sort of go, eh. So I think really one's heart and prayers go out for the people that are directly affected more than the money managers on this one.
Now, talking about this damage in Atlantic Canada, we've heard that the insured losses, the estimates would be up to $700 million. So what does that mean, Brendan?
Well, you'd think, oh, wouldn't it be really bad for insurance companies, specifically for property and casualty insurance companies like Intact or Allstate or even the vaunted Berkshire Hathaway. But really, disasters are usually, in a perverse way, good for insurers, for property and casualty insurers, because it allows them to increase their rates, introduce new markets. So people that never had flood protection on this go round are going to say, yeah, I got to get me some of that flood protection. So insurers actually, while they may have headline numbers that they have to pay out, do find themselves medium to longer term benefiting from higher rates and the opening up of new markets. So you're not going to need to have a tag day for Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway over this one.
Now, that's really interesting, Brendan. What about the economic fallout from Fiona to Atlantic provinces and maybe even the rest of Canada?
Well, that's a tougher one because, again, it's the people that are affected and the power companies. Many people on the East Coast have been without power for protracted periods. And I don't know if the footage you showed at the beginning of the segment was from actual Hurricane Ian down in Florida, or whether that was what they call stock footage. But to the extent that you have major flooding and major property damage, there is both a cost, but also an economic opportunity in rebuilding. And hopefully, to borrow from American cousins, an opportunity to build back better. Or maybe not in the same place, because these areas that get hit tend to get hit over and over again. So if you're expecting to live on a coastline in the 21st century, I think you can reasonably expect that hurricanes, floods, and other sort of natural calamities are going to be a part of life. So if you're going to build there, you're going to need to build back better. So it's an opportunity from that perspective.
All right, Brendan, thank you again for joining us today on Forum Daily.
Thank you, and we pray for all the people that have been affected by Fiona and for me.